Welcome everybody. Welcome to a video code lab tutorial for machine learning. Today we are looking at building a web scraper for in Python with Selenium package. Okay, not just Selenium package, but we are also looking at using Beautiful Soup for HTML parsing and CSV package for opening and writing to a Excel file. So first things first is we're going to start or open up a Jupyter notebook. We're going to start with that. And that will take a little bit. We've been through this process before. Some students may have to just run Jupyter notebooks from the Anaconda Explorer. Okay. What I would have ready is Blackboard open. I also have the lecture, the web scraping data with Python, just going over examples with Beautiful Soup and Selenium, okay, and what they're all about. Okay, I also have some resources that we're going to go over dealing with the more intricacies or the more intricate aspects, I should say, of the code because we want to understand what's going on. Okay, so let's get started. Here we have our list here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to just go on the desktop. And here's my desktop. And I'm going to create a new Python 3 file or Jupyter notebook, okay, which uses the Python kernel. Okay, so I'm going to rename this Selenium Web Scraper. And we're going to hit OK. And you don't need the extension there because it will just automatically give it an IP YNB extension or Jupyter Notebook. And then that doesn't just include the Python code, that also includes the formatting for the Jupyter Notebook as well, or the structure. Okay. All right. So a few things to just go over here dealing with Jupyter Notebooks. So we have our cell. If you look at the top browser, it's a local host. So we're actually running on our own operating systems. We're using our own compute resources. Say if we were using Google Colab, then we would be operating on the cloud and using actually cloud-based resources or compute resources. So just a distinction to make before we get started. Navigating through some commands, we have the save button. We can insert a new cell. We can go up or down. We can run all the cells. We can insert cells like that. We can restart the kernel. Sometimes when you move away from the window and for a while, you have to restart it. Otherwise, it will not work. And some other options here. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started. The first things first is I'm actually going to run these pip install commands for these packages. And the exclamation point, again, is making sure these are installed in the underlying operating system, in this case, our localhost systems. And that's why you see the exclamation point there. And we have 4 packages we're going to install. The first one is Selenium. Second one is the WebDriver, because we use the Chrome driver, so you can operate on different browsers here, but we want specifically the Chrome browser. We have Beautiful Soup for HTML parsing, and then finally CSV, comma separated value package. So we're going to use that to write to a new Excel file. Okay, so if you run this, you'll get a huge list saying, hey, everything, all the requirements have been satisfied. So I'm not going to actually run it, but I am going to insert a new cell below. So if we were, say, using VS Code, we would want to run these in the terminal if we did not have these installed already in our environment. Okay, and now we're going to get to the code itself. All right. So we're going to start with our import statements. Sorry, whoops, wrong line. Excuse me. And we'll start with Selenium. So from Selenium package, we're going to import the WebDriver. From a Beautiful Soup 4, we're going to import the Beautiful Soup class or module. From Selenium, again, we're going to use dot notation to access the Chrome service. And we're going to import the service class here. And this is just the logistics around using or automating the headless browser. Okay, so we need those imports. And then finally, we're just going to import the CSV package. And we're going to stop here and let's run it. And let's make sure that we get no errors. We shouldn't get any input, but that's a good, or output rather, but that's a good thing. We just don't want to have any errors. If there are any errors, then we have to troubleshoot, but otherwise it looks good. Okay. The next piece of this is we're going to have our WebDriver specified to Chrome. Okay. So you can use other browsers like Edge, and some students have done that already. But in this case, we are going to use familiar Chrome. The next part here, and we'll write a comment, is we are going to specify the URL. Okay. Now, you could use the request library for this as well to make the request to the URL, but we're just using the driver and making a GET request. So that looks like this. And we're going to pass in a page URL. We have not specified the URL, so let's specify it. So page URL equals, and this part here, we have to go into Blackboard now, and we're going to go into Module 1, excuse me. We'll go into our Jupyter or web scraping and data extraction with Python, and we want to just grab this link here, and I'll just open it, just copy the link, and we'll head back into our code lab or notebook, and we'll paste it right in there. But as you can see, this is CPI information or inflationary data from Statistics Canada. Again, a really good source for statistics information. And you can see we have CPI data from across all sorts of goods and services and products. Okay. And relatively recent, you can see we have August 2024 is recent, and we're in September now. Okay. All right. So we've actually done quite a bit. We've specified the URL we're making the GET request. And then we have to wait for the table to load. And how do we do that? Well, we access the driver again, but we use this method called implicitly wait. Okay. We're going to set this to 10. Okay, so it's basically a time delay or set timeout equivalent. And what this does essentially is it waits for the JavaScript, it waits for the page to load. So the DOM to load all the elements, but it also waits for the JavaScript to execute. So we can then grab the dynamic data, or in other words, the table data. Okay. All right. And this next step is we're getting the page source after the JS or JavaScript execution. Okay. All right, and what does that look like? Well, we'll be descriptive, and we'll say page source equals driver page underscore source. And it's exactly that. It's the source code of the page itself. So if you were to open up the dev tools and look at the elements tab, that is the source code for the page. Okay. And the next step here is we're parsing the HTML document with Beautiful Soup. And what does that look like? So we're going to define a variable called soup, and this is equal to our Beautiful Soup. And This is actually a function defined in the class, or a method, if you will, and we're going to pass in the page source code. And then the second argument is the parser. So we can, again, use XML or extensible markup language, or in this case, HTML, because it's HTML on the page. Okay, perfect. And the next part of this is we are going to find the table element. Okay, and so what does this look like? Well, it requires developers to either go to the page, hit F12, or right-click inspect, and we're going to find, we're going to target rather this table. Whoops, let's do that again. So right-click inspect, and we're going to look at the container elements for the table. Okay, so right here we have a good contender, so cube, simple, table. We have table container, but we're going to go all the way to the top and find the tag. So we have the tag here. And so we can target the table a few ways. We can do class. We can use the class name, which is pub-table or dash table, or simple table in camel case. Okay, in this case, we're actually going to target it using the class, but you can use the ID as well. So we're going to go table equals soup find, and we have the table. So this is going to be indicative of the tag name. And then finally, the class name. The ID, so if we were to do this by ID, we would do it like so. But since it's a class, we have to include this underscore here. And then the equal sign, and we're just going to put in public table. So that corresponds to what we see here. Okay, so it grabs a table. Perfect. Okay, keep going here. And now we're going to create an if statement in Python. So the hallmarks of an if statement are we have if table, so that's the condition. So basically, if the table is not null or undefined or empty, we're going to execute this code. And the first thing we're going to do is extract the column headers. Why are we extracting the column headers? So in this activity, we are going to be dissecting the table a little bit and separating the headers from so the column headers, which would be the features of the data, from the row data or the actual values. Okay, and what does that look like? So we're going to define a headers variable, and this is equal to a list. So whenever you see brackets, you know that's a list, which is the equivalent of an array in Python. And we're going to embark now on what's called list comprehension in Python. Okay, so I have W3's tutorial here open in another tab, and we're just going to go over it. So list comprehension offers shorter syntax when you want to create a new list based on the values of an existing list. So basically, in this example, so based on the list of fruits, we're finding just the elements that contain the string A. Okay, so that would preclude cherry, kiwi, those two items there, and then we'd have the three remaining: mango, apple, and banana. But you can see the syntax. So if A in X, so we're running a condition, and then we're appending to a new list. Okay, so we're essentially creating a new list, and that's what's called list comprehension. So shorter syntax, new list based on an evaluation or values of an existing list. Okay, and that's what we're going to perform here. So we are first going to write this table find all. So we have the table defined, but we're using this find all function, and we're going to find all the table headers. Okay, so that's the first piece, but we're actually going to work backwards. Okay, because that is our, basically, that is our condition where we're going to create a new list of existing table headers, but we're going to perform an operation on it first, and that's what's going to be this first bit here. So we're going to go table headers get text. So this is similar to get a value in in JavaScript. It's just getting the text value from the table headers. And we're going to perform a strip operation. So strip is equivalent to trim, and it is essentially just getting rid of the white space. And then we have a for all the THs in our list here. So when we run this find all, essentially we're creating a list of all the table header elements, and then we're performing this operation that we've completed on the left side for all the THs in the results here on the right side. So we kind of did this in a roundabout way, but I found that it's easier to explain what is actually going on. So this would be extracting the column headers using list comprehension. Okay. And that's something new to us, I would imagine. Okay. The next part of this is we're going to do something similar, but we're going to extract the rows or the row data. Okay. And this is going to work a little bit differently. So the first part of this is we define an empty list called rows. Okay. And because if you envision a table, and we can just go back to the StatsCan website, we have in the header, we have kind of a restricted number of headers, but you can see in the rows, well, that comprises most of our data. Okay. So when we come back here, we have to iterate through a bunch of rows. Okay. And that requires a for loop. So what we're going to do is for all the TRs, so table rows in table find all. In this case, we are looking for the TRs. Okay, just like we did with the table headers previously, we are going to conduct an operation. So make sure you tab that out because indentation is key. And we're going to have an operation similar to the headers with list comprehension. So I'm actually going to copy that and paste it down below. But instead of table headers, we are changing all the THs to table data rows. Okay, because inside a row is table data cells. That's where the values exist. And we're doing the exact same thing, except the only difference is we are in a for loop. Okay, so we're doing this for all the rows. We're not just doing it for the header rows, okay, which are limited. The rows comprise most of the table, and that's what's going on here. The last bit of this is we're going to do a null check or an empty check on the row. And we are going to now append the row data. So the new row data that we've stripped, we've gotten the text, we've got rid of the white space, and now we have a new list of rows that's all cleaned up and ready to go. Okay, it's just that simple. All right, so put it that way, I believe it is a lot simpler to comprehend, but don't take my word for it. Let's look at the output of this now. So we're going to print the column headers, and we're just going to have a print statement, column headers. This is going to be kind of the title there, and then finally we're going to print the headers themselves. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the row here. Okay, so instead of column headers, we're going to change that to we're going to use an escape character on a new line. So this is the \n is just means a new line in Python, so we don't have things clumped together, and we are going to return the rows in this case. Okay. Can we get away with this? No, because what's happening is the rows are inside of an iterable, so we can't just print that out like we did the headers. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to iterate through the rows, and that's just through a simple for loop. So we're going to go for row in rows, colon, we're going to print each row. Okay. And there we go. So at this point, it would be good to stop and actually run the code. And oh, I did forget in this for loop here, right after the tr, let's put a colon there, and then we can run it. Okay, so it opens up the browser. Okay, it grabs the data, and you can see now we have the data dissected to row headers and also row data. So all the row data here. Okay, and something has gone awry where looks like I'm printing out the rows too much. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm just going to go print rows this time, and we're going to run that again. Okay. Okay. So we have the row data. It looks like this data is being doubled up here. So what I'm going to do is troubleshoot why. So we have table data get text strip for table data in the table data. Okay. Oh, here's my problem. So I actually did not change this table to table row because I don't want to get the entire table. I just want the table rows. Okay. And we're looking for all the table data. So please change this from table to tr. That was my mistake. And then let's run it again. Good. All right, so that looks a lot better. We have the column headers and we have the row data. Perfect. Everything's looking good. And as developers, we always want to be looking through the data or printing out the data, just making sure everything is good. Okay, the next part of this is if you look at the data we have in the headers, we have a lot of headers that we don't need. Okay, so all the headers that I've highlighted here, I don't necessarily want. I simply want these headers here of the products, and they'll correspond with the row data. So the row data will correspond with all these headers here. But what happens if we try to put them together, it will come out a little wonky because there's too many headers and not enough column or row data. Okay, so what we're actually going to do to fix that is we're going to create a new header, a new set of headers. Okay, and we're going to put it in a tuple. So a tuple is denoted by the curly braces there. And basically, I'm not going to type all this out. I could manually. Oh, sorry, I should explain a tuple. A new set of headers inside a tuple. A tuple again is like a list, but you cannot change it. Okay, it's these values one set cannot be changed. You would have to create a new set altogether or an iterable altogether. So what I'm going to do here, because I have this printed out, is I'm just going to grab everything from all items. So let's locate all items, including the opening and closing quotes. And I'm going to go all the way down to services right before the bracket, and I'm going to copy it. Okay. Once that's copied, I'm going to come back to my tuple, and I'm going to paste it right in there. It's going to be horizontal, which I don't want. But what I'm going to do is right after every comma, I'm going to just hit return. Okay. And it's kind of hard to see because in the notebook, you can see my cursor is actually almost translucent or the same color as the background. So it can be a little tricky just navigating things. And watch out, some of these items, some of these headers are quite long, so you don't want to hit return in the wrong area. Okay. All right. I have a few more to do, and good. Okay. Perfect. Then I'll just get rid of some of that space to make it all nice and neat. And there we go. We have our new headers tuple. And I'm going to use this opportunity to save my work and just make sure that we have no commas that or returns that are inside of things. Like you can see here for household operations, well, this is actually one big heading. So I'm going to delete that, and we should have something similar to that. So all of these headers are going to correspond to the data down below. Okay, and how do I know that? Well, it does take some wrangling, essentially. You would look at the data and then decide, okay, well, I don't want necessarily maybe this stuff. Okay, I just want all of this information here with the data. Maybe I want the dates or the years. Sorry, not the years, but the monthly periods. And I would want these headings here that indicate what the row data actually is. And these are actually labels or features of the data. So you can pop these into a supervised algorithm. Okay, so we are done with that. We have our new headers, but how do we put this all together, and why are we doing this? Because we're writing this data back to a CSV file. So when we execute this, it's going to grab the data. It's going to populate the headers and row lists, and it's actually going to write it to a new Excel file or CSV file. Okay, so the next step is we need to write the data to a comma separated value file. How do we do that? Well, this is where the CSV package comes in, and we can go right to the docs, the Python docs, to figure out more. So in this case, we're going to use CSV writer as we're writing, and it takes as the first argument the CSS file. It takes some formatting settings. A dialect is essentially just a preset set of formatting for the file. But what we're going to use is new line and the W flag. And the new line essentially is, you're writing data to a new line. So it's not in one big line, horizontal line. And we are offering delimiters as well, just to separate the data. And in a comma separated file, those delimiters are commas. Okay. All right. But they can be other punctuation. So we're going to start with open. So with open is built in with Python, and essentially it allows us to open up files. And actually Python will automatically close the file when it's done with it. So we don't even have to dictate anything to do with that. Python handles that altogether. So we're actually going to specify a file name. So this file name doesn't even need to exist. We are going to create it. But note that if the file name already exists, it will not overwrite it. Okay, there'll be an error. So you have to make sure this file does not already exist in the current working directory. And if you recall, the current working directory is our desktop. Okay. All right, so this next bit here is the W flag, and that just means we're performing a write operation. And then we have a new line, and that just deals with formatting the files to new lines. And we're going to go with open as CSV file, and then colon. And then we're going to start our syntax. Okay, so I'll explain it as it goes along. So we're using the writer, and if you go back to the docs, it returns a writer object responsible for converting the user's data into delimited strings, okay, from the object. It uses some settings, but essentially this is how we write to the file. So we're going to start with a variable called writer, and this is equal to CSV writer. We're going to pass in the file, so CSV file. And we've given this file now an alias of CSV file, and then we throw that into the writer method. Okay. The next part is we'll insert the new column as the first column in each row. And so if we look at this tuple, This is not going to be a horizontal column. This is actually going to be a vertical column. So we need to mimic, in other words, what you see here. Okay, so we're going to have all that data minus this data up top, and we just want this data appended to the file. Okay. All right. So how do we do that? Well, we use a for loop. So for I, so for the index, we're going to enumerate the rows. Okay, and rows we've already defined as this new list, and enumerating meaning we are basically laying them out. So for each row, for each index, we are going to do this. So rows I equals, we're going to go headers tuple I, and then we're going to plus row. So what this is doing is, again, we're inserting the new column as the first column in each row. So for each row, we are inserting the headers tuple, and this is based off the index, and we do it through a for loop, okay? And enumerating meaning we're using the text or the values in the rows list, okay? So it's more intricate, but you can intuitively get a sense for what's going on. We're using the index to attach a new column as the first column in each row, and we're populating that first column via index with these enumerated rows or the values of the rows list. Okay. The next part is, now that we have the headers, is we are going to write the headers. Okay. And how we do that is we go writer, write row, and we'll pass in our headers. But we're going to pass in actually a range. So a range in Python looks like this. So we can actually iterate through the headers. And if you look at the header data, it means we can start at index position 2 and end at index position 8. So I did have to do a little tweaking just to make sure the data and the headers and the data aligned up. And I achieved that using this range. And headers, well, this is a list, and this is a range in Python. So nice and easy. So we're writing that. And then finally, as part of the write process, we're writing the rows. Okay, and what this looks like is very similar. So we'll go writer, write rows. So if you notice, we have a row here. The headers are a single row, and here we have a plural because we have more than one row. So we're going to use the rows method instead of write row, and that achieves our objective there. Okay, and we're almost done, but I'm hoping that makes sense. We're going to keep going. So we need some indication that the data has been successfully saved to table underscore data.csv. And that will give us a clear indication. And if you recall, we're in an if. Okay, this is an if statement in Python, so we need an else to finish it. And the else is going to be a print statement saying a table not found. So in the case where the table's not found, we're just going to print that, but we know we have found the data through our print statements, so we should be good. And then the final piece of this goes back all the way to the Selenium driver, okay, the web driver. And we're going to close now. So after all that, we're going to close the web driver. And what this looks like is very simple. We're going to go driver quit. And this will actually close the headless browser or the automation process. After all of that has been done, we've grabbed the data, we parse, we fetched the website, we've targeted the class, the table, we've stripped or reformatted the data, we've rewritten the data to a CSV file based on our new tuple, based on our operations here. Okay, and sorry, not quite, it should be quit. And so all we need to do now is run it. And, oh, we have an else. Why do I have, let's see here. So this else is erroring out. I think it's just because I had the space there. Let's see. So we had, oh, sorry. The else should be, it looks like all the way back because the if is all the way back. So we're going to run that. And wait, hold on. Let's see. I just got to get a reference. So if the if is there, it means our else has to be all the way back. And what that means is we can throw these print statements back as well. And we're going to throw the driver quit back here. Okay, so that looks like it's good. So indentation, again, does matter in Python. So just make sure it's all lined up like so. And you should be good. Now we can run it. It opens up the browser. It grabs the data. We can see the data. And let's see. Oh, I did have an issue. So I had the issue in line 70. So where we have for I, row, and enumerate rows. Okay, let's have a look. Row and enumerate rows. We have the semicolon. Sorry, let me go back. And headers tuple plus row, rows I. And let's see, insert the column as row. Let's read the error. It says, set object is not subscriptable. Okay, so I think what that is telling me is perhaps we have an issue with the formatting. So let me just double check what we have going on. So with open, that looks good. CSV writer, CSV file. And we have rows I equals headers tuple I plus row. And enumerate rows, rows in enumerate. Okay, so that looks good. I'm just going to run that again and see if we get the same thing. Yeah, we do. Okay. That's okay. It's good to know just because, so set object is not subscriptable. So a set is, so a tuple rather, something you can't change, or a set, okay, is not subscriptable. So let's have a look at what they mean by that. Let me just double check my syntax. Okay, and give me a sec. I'm going to double check that this file does not exist, and I don't believe you'll see it. Okay. Let me get back here. And let me close the browser. Let me open up that again. All right, so I'm just going to write that again, or sorry, run that again. We have the page, it's good. And all right, so I do have a type error again. And I can almost guarantee that it's something very small. So headers tuple, let me just double check my code. Row plus I and rows, CSV file for I, row and enumerate rows. So that looks good. That looks really good. All right, table data CSV. Excuse me one sec. For I rows in the newer rows, headers tuple. We should be able to add this. And let me just double check my data. Services 9. Good, good, good. That looks great. Okay. And let me just one more time double check this. And actually, you know what? I'm a dev, so let's Stack Overflow this. That's what it's there for. And we'll try and get, the problem is sets are unordered, therefore do not support indexing and slicing. Why do you have to pass this? Okay. Unordered collections of unique elements that does not support operations like indexing or slicing. But, and I get that, and that's essentially what it's saying is the set object, we cannot have this indexing. And so how do we change that? Well, let's see what we can do here. A set of unique elements, and of course we have a unique element. It's just saying it does not want to index. All right. Let's see. Okay, so a set, and this goes back to our some students' experience with Dart. Again, unique elements, an unordered list, a set. And we're just going to find out, it has something to do with the index, of course. We can't run that on the set there. But the question is, why is it being interpreted? We should have a tuple, in other words. Okay, and I think our attention should go all the way back to this tuple. And we'll find out that indeed I should have used parentheses. Okay, sorry. So a tuple is defined with parentheses and not curly braces. So that definitely is my problem. Curly braces, again, are sets. Okay, so unordered lists, and we can't run indexes on sets. So my apologies. Tuples are used with parentheses. Okay, so if we run that, and see, that's just how that's just easy. And I'm going to include that because troubleshooting is part and parcel with development. So we figured out the issue. We're going to run it again. Grabs the data, grabs all the information, and finally we have this message: data has been successfully saved to table data CSV. So if you go to your desktop, you'll find a new file called table data, and if you go inside that file, you will see your web scraped information in that file. Okay. All right. So I will save this to GitHub and share it with students. But I hope that gave some really good insight into web scraping and just using the CSV package as well as tuples and iterating through table information, list comprehension. That's something new. That's a topic that's new to students as well as some of the built-in methods with these packages and using Chrome automation tools, okay, or browser automation. All right, so I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.